Hello and welcome to Region Locked. Since its inception, Pokemon has managed to grow into the highest grossing media franchise of all time, and of course has an extremely close relationship with the video game industry, and with that, Nintendo. The Pokemon series may be enjoyed by viewers of all ages, but the anime is primarily marketed towards children, while the games are considered more of an all-ages venture. As the owners of the Pokemon brand, the Nintendo company aren't exclusively controlled by Nintendo. Their ability to create products branching across multiple video game platforms allows the series to reach a wider audience than just those interested in Nintendo's own systems. Over the years, this has resulted in a number of titles for Windows PCs and more recently, mobile games. In Japan, however, Pokemon could even be found on a platform created by a one-time major rival for Nintendo, Sega. Today, we'll be looking at the 7 Pokemon games released on Sega platforms, the Sega Pico and Advanced Pico Bina. Before we explain the Pokemon games on the system, we should give you a brief introduction on what on earth the Sega Pico even is and where it came from. The Sega Pico was released in Japan in 1993 and saw an international release a year later in 1994. The system held some mild success for a number of years, though ultimately it was discontinued outside of Japan in 1998. In Japan, however, the system would see continued support until late 2005. As of April 2005, 3.4 million Pico consoles had been sold at retail, with 11.2 million software sales to go with it, including 300 different software titles. The Pico's hardware matched that of the Sega Mega Drive or Genesis, though differed dramatically in control and function. The Pico is shaped somewhat like a laptop, though without a screen or full keyboard, instead having a pad controlled by a magic pen, as well as some coloured directional buttons. Cartridges for the console aren't actually cartridges in the traditional sense at all. Referred to as storyware, each game comes in the form of a picture book with a slot at the bottom which connects to the top half of the system. The game progresses as each page of the book is turned. In total, 3 Pokemon games were released for the Sega Pico. Pokemon Catch the Numbers was released July 23, 2002 and uses the second generation of Pokemon. It was designed to teach children numeracy skills, with the story following Pikachu and Togepi after Team Rocket steals all of Ash, Misty and Brock's other Pokemon. The player is faced with a selection of mini-games that must be completed in order to retrieve the lost companions. As a side note, within the data of Catch the Numbers, a large sprite of wheezing can be found which would ultimately never be displayed in-game. Pokemon Advanced Generation I've Begun Hiragana and Katakana was released on November 17, 2003 and uses the 3rd generation of Pokemon. It was designed to teach Japanese children how to read and write Japanese hiragana and katakana script. The story involves Team Rocket deceiving Ash, Brock, May and Max by disguising themselves and telling them they need 25 Pokemon to progress to the Pokemon stage. Each Pokemon is caught by simply correctly drawing 5 kana. If Pokemon on Sega wasn't enough, a Pikachu Pico was released in 2004, a year before the end of the Pico's life cycle. The system was just a Pico designed with a Pikachu aesthetic, otherwise having no differences to a standard Pico console, of course created entirely as a way of boosting the system's sales. The console came bundled with a copy of Pokemon Advanced Generation I've Begun Hiragana and Katakana. The last game released on the standard Pico was Pokemon Advanced Generation Pico for Everyone Pokemon Loud Battle. Released on July 13, 2004, the game also includes the 3rd generation of Pokemon. The game stars Ash, Brock, May and Team Rocket and is mainly based around reading and playing minigames. The game came with a Pikachu-themed controller, with various minigames being playable in a competitive 2-player mode, with both players using either side of the controller. Inevitably, the Sega Pico would come to the end of its life cycle in 2005, but wouldn't be entirely scrapped. Instead, a follow-up console was created for the Japanese market which would show clear upgrades over earlier incarnations. The successor, the Advanced Pico Bina, was released in 2005 and is often referred to as simply the Bina. The two systems are extremely similar in design, though the Bina features an additional set of buttons on its right side to accommodate left-handed children, represent, as well as the inclusion of built-in speakers, and ports to allow extended functionality, such as an SD card reader which can be used to save game progress and store images. Sega Toys honed in on the forms of education that they'd hoped to achieve with the Bina, summarizing them with 5 headings. Education, basic knowledge of letters, words and numbers. Virtue education, develop sociality and discipline by learning morals and manners. physical education, improve and understand exercise and physical abilities such as rhythm, food education, acquire proper knowledge of food, both in eating habits and manners, and finally, safety, develop safety awareness such as avoiding crises in daily life and health awareness. As a technicality, the Beano is actually the last Sega console ever to be released, a full 6 years after the Dreamcast. While the console has never been officially cancelled, there have not been any new games released for the system since July 2011. In total, there were 4 Pokemon games released for the Beano. Pokemon Advanced Generation Pokemon Number Battle, released on October 1st, 2005. The game uses the 3rd generation of Pokemon. It mostly involves finding hidden Pokemon in various scenes, as well as solving math questions and puzzles. Intellectual Training Drill Pokemon Diamond and Pearl Letter and Number Intelligence game was released on the 21st of April 2007 and featured the 4th generation of Pokemon. The game was geared towards teaching children general knowledge, words and numbers such as counting Pokemon, grouping them based on on-screen prompts, colouring by numbers, and a simple jigsaw. This game in particular does seem more general than the other titles, rather than focusing on specific skills. Pokemon Diamond and Pearl Search for Pokemon Adventure in the Maze was released on September 17, 2009, using the 4th generation of Pokemon. This title seems to be more Pokemon-centric than the other games, involving puzzles based around Pokemon, with the player having to use the book to highlight Pokemon either based on their silhouette or finding them in on-screen mazes. The game also encourages children to learn the Pokemon by name alone rather than relying entirely on images. And lastly, Pokemon Best Wishes Intelligence Training Pokemon Big Sports Meet was released on December 4th, 2010 and included Generation 5 Pokemon. The player takes on the role of Ash through various games which involve learning hiragana, numbers and English, as well as completing a number of exercises in order to win medals. Through the use of the Beano SD card reader sold separately, it's possible to save the game and print images created in-game. The Pico was made purely as a form of edutainment, providing an enjoyable learning experience to young children. Though initially created by Sega, it was eventually passed over to their subsidiary Sega Toys to run on their own in the year 2000. Sega Toys was formed in February 1991, when Sega absorbed the Japanese toy manufacturer Yonezawa Toys. Yonezawa Toys was formed in 1932, and were well known for their work on the creation of tin toys during the 1950s and 1960s, gradually evolving into the production of electronic and radio-controlled toys as trends shifted. But it wasn't just their toys that made the company so profitable, as Yonezawa Toys also worked as a distributor with major ties to the Western market, working with companies such as Hasbro. They would eventually go on to become the largest post-war toy manufacturer in Japan. The merger of the two companies resulted in the creation of a Sega subsidiary called Sega Yonezawa, which over the years would transform until eventually it would become known as simply Sega Toys. Sega Toys have continued to produce electronic toys and gadgets, as well as standard toys and licensed products, winning numerous awards along the way. Sega as a console producer had a code which was given to all third-party developers for their systems, which would be displayed on the box or hardware of any third-party product between the 1980s and 2000. Interestingly, this would even extend to their own subsidiary of Sega Yonezawa with the code T193, and then eventually Sega Toys would be assigned their own code T418. The fact that these two companies had codes associated with them could imply that Sega, the parent company, treated Sega Toys as a third party. Sega and Sega Toys, at least at the time of this video, do not have much involvement with one another, with only rare occasions when the two businesses work in tandem. For example, Sega Toys provides prizes for Sega's claw machines in arcades. As a result of this detachment from Sega, it seems to provide Sega Toys with the freedom to work with any company they desire, regardless of loyalty to its parent company. This has resulted in Sega Toys even working with other companies to produce video games, such as the Ochaken series developed by MTO, rather than following the obvious choice of using Sega and keeping development in-house. To bring it back to Pokemon, Sega and Sega Toys have had many interactions with the Japanese TV station TV Tokyo, who have been broadcasting the Pokemon anime series since its debut in the 90s. The companies have worked together to produce a variety of games for Sega consoles, including Hono no Tokyuji Dojidampe and A Harumanara, two tie-in games to their respective anime series produced by Sega and licensed by TV Tokyo. Sega Toys are also toy manufacturers for classic anime shows on the channel too, such as Bakugan. These relationships would make it seem only natural for Sega Toys to eventually deal in the production of content for the Pokemon anime. with the edutainment games seeming to focus almost entirely on the anime side of Pokemon, featuring characters from the show such as Ash, Misty and Brock, rather than characters developed by Game Freak on Nintendo systems. In the same way that Sega now produce games for Nintendo consoles, among others, due to the fact that Sega no longer produce their own, without Nintendo forming a toy division within their company that is capable of matching the extensive range of specialities that can be found within Sega toys, it's likely that they will continue to use them, as well as various other toy companies, as and when they need them. Case in point, at the time of this video, they actually still do, with toys such as the Mon Poke series of toys being co-produced by Sega Toys.
Hey awesome jacket dude, are you bored of watching Everett Lathrop, Gilmo Chavez and Ken 111 on the TV? I just want to turn your attention to the Freemaster Gamer's new Region-Lock laptop. It holds free 2 games, just like Chad Barnon's Swimming Adventure and Bake Corey Nelson a Jerry Cherry Pie. Or how about playing Clefairy, a Pokemon game with just one Pokemon to catch, just like Malcavio and Vetus Varnus here. Your boy Beowulf used it to find Mars, while Trevor Wooten painted the house yellow. Avoid an error 1355 and buy it today!
Pokemon, gotta catch him, it's you and me. I know it's my destiny. Pokemon, oh, you know it, friend.